Goeiedag, mijn naam is Evan, ik ben immigratie-procureur hier in Amerika en ik wil you help om immigratiewet te verstaan. Now, eerste, thank you for all of y'all who've been sending me messages on how to clear up this lagging COVID. For those who don't know, I told you about a week ago I caught COVID for like the 5th time, so it's not a big deal. But the cough never seems to go away. So I've got my lemon water. My daughter's put stickers all over my cup. Drinking that. I also have my coffee in my G mug. And I wanted to just post a video, as I try to do, update on what I hear about the refugee program. And again, this is really targeted towards Afrikaner refugees who are, nog steeds binnen South Africa, and not my asylum folks here in the United States. Although, to give you some news, there have been, and I tell people of Afrikaners who are in removal proceedings, meaning they're going in front of immigration court, that this process takes years. For example, I represented someone this morning and asked for a reset for attorney prep time, and they reset his court date for 2027. So Afrikaners who are here in the United States, as I've told you, while asylum is difficult, if not close to impossible, and I'm clear with everyone who asks me about this, you do have a substantial amount of time in the United States as we go through this process because of how long it takes. So he will be able to be here, and after his, and at some point he will be able, when his work authorization clock, his EAD, employment authorization document clock at 6 months, he will be able to get a work permit. He will be able to stay, but eventually he's going to have to return to court and have an individual hearing, which is the merits hearing, which is that asylum hearing. And again, of course, it's very difficult to be granted asylum. But I just wanted to give some perspective for all of my Afrikaners who are here in the States who watch, to remind you of how long the process takes, and you've got to be patient. So back to the refugees real quick, I wanted to say a few things. And the first is, my last video, I got a lot of responses from many of y'all, and I want to make it clear that you need to document this as best you can, because refugee programs, along with asylum programs, as I've told you, the point is not what's happened to you in the past. The point is what could happen to you if you stay, right? Someone even brought up and commented about the Holocaust or concentration camps in the comments. And I said, that's a good example. For example, if it's 1946 in Germany, and I was a Jewish man, let's say, and I said, hey, I was in a concentration camp, I should be able to be a refugee to come to the United States, the argument is going to be, but it's 1946, the Nazi regime is gone, the group that was persecuting you is no longer there, therefore the persecution no longer exists, so you don't qualify as a refugee, or you couldn't come here and file for asylum. The point is always what could happen to you in the future. As I explained in the last video, the reason they ask about past persecution, or they say, can you articulate for my refugees past persecution or the well-founded fear of future persecution, the reason they ask about past persecution is if you have been persecuted in the past because of an immutable characteristic, race, by the government or someone the government is unable and willing to control, you automatically get a rebuttable presumption of a well-founded fear of future persecution. And that makes sense, because the government can come back and say, well, conditions have changed, therefore it's not well-founded anymore. It's not objectively reasonable. But again, the goal of asking past persecution is still to prove that there is a fear in the future. But you do not have to have past persecution to have a well-founded fear of future persecution. So if you are being asked, and by the way, this is not USCIS. USCIS, everyone I've talked to USCIS interviews has had good reports, good things to say, what they can say. And this is not USCIS, this is the initial screenings. And it's clear from those initial screenings, they screen you and they refer you. Now, they're not supposed to deny you based on the merits of your claim. That's for USCIS to do. The merits of whether or not you have a well-founded fear of future persecution, or if you've experienced persecution in the past due to an immutable characteristic, is under the realm of USCIS, not any of these initial screening agencies. So they should not be denying you because they find your story of past or future persecution insufficient. That's for USCIS to determine. And they should not be not allowing you to talk about the well-founded fear of future persecution, because that's the ultimate goal. And I hate to use terms like gold, but you understand what I'm saying. So that needs to be understood and need to document this stuff. Keep paper trails, get a hold of all this, keep documenting, keep commenting here. I'm trying to see what I can do on mine, which isn't a lot. I mean, I'm a small YouTube fish. I'm a small attorney. I'm a little fat, but I'm still a small, attorney in the realm of attorneys. And I'm a law professor at a small university. So I don't have a whole lot of clout or pull anywhere. But I do have USCIS contacts, and I do have other people that I'm going to confront about this in a little bit and see what I can find out. But the fear of future persecution is the goal, whether it's for a refugee or for an asylee. The other update that I wanted to give, so please keep commenting that here, is one question I get a lot, and forgive me for not answering a lot of them. But most of the questions that I don't answer are because they're unanswerable by me. I'm not the initial screeners. I'm not USCIS. I'm not the US government. So I don't know. So many people will be like, hey, Professor G, I submitted my statement months ago. I got the call. They haven't called back. Have I been denied? Have I not been referred? I don't know. I don't know. And a lot of people ask, what do I do? My answer is wait, because there's nothing else you can do. We've talked about this at length. I know Colonel Wyatt's talked about it at length. I know you're scared, and I know you're trying to get out as fast as possible. But programs like this are logistical nightmares. There's many moving parts, there's many moving steps, and sometimes you just have to be patient and wait, and there's nothing else that any of us could tell you. Were you not referred from your initial screening to USCIS? I don't know. I would say that unless you've received some kind of official documentation, that the answer is no, you have not been denied. Your application wasn't thrown out. But I say that because that only doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense they wouldn't give you some documentation to saying you're not being referred to the next stage of the process. There would have to be something. In my opinion, does that mean that's what they're doing? No. They very well might not refer you and never tell you. I don't know. Okay? But in the past, historically, dealing with asylum cases in the United States and looking at past refugee programs in my quest to help Afrikaners and build this channel about answering all these refugee questions and that come up, there has always been paper trails for these things. And it would blow my mind if they didn't refer you and they didn't send you some kind of documentation about that. But as far as have you been referred, have you been denied, I can tell you, I don't know. And I have no way to tell you and no one who you can contact except to reach back out to the contacts who reached out to you and see what's happening. So my advice still is to be patient, right? And this, of course, always goes back to a video I made a while ago when I asked the question, what is plan B? And many people got mad about that. And again, this channel is a safe space. I don't care if you ask the same question a million times. I don't care if you get upset. I don't care if you get mad at me, because I don't think you're mad at me. I think you're just frustrated and mad, and I get that. Vent on this channel. Just don't call me names, okay? That's the one thing. I get heartbroken, right? I get offended by that. So don't call me names. But I do think, realistically, while this program is obviously moving, it's not a scam like some people are commenting. It is legitimate. It is moving. There are refugees already here. The process is going full speed ahead. And it's moving, as far as I'm concerned, relatively fast for what it is. Very complex refugee program, right? Where the refugees are still within the country where their oppressors and persecutors are. So I think that this is a very good thing, and I think it is moving and it is picking up speed and going in the right direction. But I want to remind you that, you need to have some kind of what-if scenario. I tell that to asylum seekers here. What if you get ordered removed? What are you going to do? There's a chance, as you know, there are quotas and limitations on amount of refugees per year from different countries. I talked about that. That's not a surprise. We knew that all along. And the Trump administration has 3 more years left in power when they get, so not when they get, because who knows, but you understand my point. If the Republican Party loses power in 3 years and a Democrat takes the Oval Office and becomes the president, they can declare that conditions have changed within South Africa, whether it has or hasn't. They can end the refugee program, which means if you haven't gotten over here by that point, the program is closed. Then all that's open for you is asylum, which would then be very difficult, even more difficult than it is now. So what is the plan B? And I'm just saying this as a friend. As a friend to many of you, half the reason why I can't stop making videos is because of how kind y'all are and the support you give me and the comments you leave. They make me feel like I'm actually doing some good for you and for a cultuur and a geschiedenis that ek het baie respect vir and want to help. So what are you going to do if you can't leave, right? What are you going to do if the United States and its actions can't change the ANC or, what the EFF does or all this other crazy racial bigotry and bias that goes on inside Africa right now? So think about that. It is something you do have to consider. So that's it. I just wanted to give a quick update. And I did want to say that I don't have answers for the what do I do questions, right? Because I'm not these organizations, I'm not these agencies, I don't know. And as I've said many times, and you've heard on my channel, Cornwall channel, a bunch of channels, you don't need an immigration attorney to do a refugee program. All of this is clearly laid out for refugees to understand who are fleeing persecution in their homeland, or in your case, still in your home country. So all we can do is speculate based on what we know in the past, based on what we know about the laws surrounding refugee programs and asylum programs, and the same information that you guys have is really the same information that I have access to. So I'm just giving you an analysis of that information. So that's it. Stay safe. Remember to like, subscribe, share, consider becoming a member if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next update in the next video.